Danny Walker wasn't the kind of kid who went looking for trouble, but he was the kind who couldn't resist an adventure. It was a warm summer evening, and the sun had dipped below the trees, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange. His parents thought he was back at the house with his older sister, but Danny had slipped out the back door to explore the woods that bordered their yard. He liked the quiet there, the mystery in the shadows, and the feeling of being alone in a place where almost anything seemed possible. Tonight, though, something was different. A strange light pulsed through the trees, a soft, greenish glow that flickered and shifted as if calling to him. Danny stopped, curiosity sparking, and watched the light from a distance. It didn't look like the glow from a flashlight or a lantern. It was alive. He took a deep breath and crept closer, stepping over tree roots and ducking under low-hanging branches. The light grew brighter with every step. Finally, he reached a small clearing, and there, slumped against a rock, was the last thing he expected to see, an alien. The creature was tall, though it was hunched over in pain. Its skin shimmered silver and green, like fish scales, and it had 4 long, slender arms, each one covered in delicate patterns that seemed to move and change with the flickering light. Its face was smooth and featureless, except for a pair of large, round eyes that seemed to see right through him. Danny's mouth went dry. The alien's breathing was labored, each breath rattling as it clutched its chest. The alien's head jerked up, and its eyes widened as it saw him. Danny froze, his heart pounding in his ears. Then, in a voice that was both a whisper and a hum, the alien spoke. The words didn't make sense at first, just sounds strung together in a language he couldn't understand. But somehow, deep in his mind, he knew what the alien was saying. "Help! Please!" The alien's voice cracked, and it slumped further against the rock, its body going limp. Without thinking, Danny rushed forward. He didn't know what to do, but he couldn't just stand there and watch it suffer. His dad had taught him some basic first aid for emergencies, but this was an alien, not a human. Still, he remembered what he'd learned and pressed his hands against the alien's chest, trying to figure out if it had a heartbeat. He couldn't feel anything, but the alien's body felt warmer under his hands, as if it was responding to his touch. He tried something he'd seen on TV, pressing down rhythmically on the alien's chest. "Stay with me," he muttered. Don't go yet. I'm trying to help." After a few long, tense minutes, the alien's breathing began to steady. Its eyes opened, and it looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something he couldn't quite place. "You saved me," the alien whispered, its voice clearer now, resonating in his mind like music. "Your kindness is unexpected." Danny sat back, heart still racing. You can talk? I mean, I can understand you." The alien inclined its head, a gesture that seemed both foreign and familiar. "Yes. I am Krylax, from the planet Xanor. Our minds are connected now, young one. And for what you have done, I owe you a debt that goes beyond words." Danny's head spun. An alien from another planet, connected to his mind? It was like something out of a comic book, but he knew, deep down, that this was real. He could feel Krylax's thoughts, faint and distant, like a melody he was just beginning to hear. And somehow, he felt Krylax's pain too, the loneliness, the exhaustion, and a sense of desperation that went far beyond a simple heart attack. What happened to you?" Danny asked, still trying to process everything. Krylax's eyes darkened, and it glanced around the clearing as if afraid of being overheard. "I am a fugitive, of sorts. My people do not tolerate sharing knowledge with those outside our world. It is forbidden. Yet I came to Earth seeking understanding, connection, and answers." But my heart dashed. Krylax hesitated, placing one of its hands over its chest. "My body is not accustomed to your world's gravity. I was not prepared for how fragile I would become here." Danny swallowed, his mind racing with questions. "So, If you're a fugitive, does that mean someone's after you? Krylax's gaze sharpened. Yes. The Intergalactic Council. They enforce the laws of knowledge, and they do not take kindly to breaches. Danny's eyes widened, and he looked around, half expecting more aliens to emerge from the trees. So, they're coming here? Krylax reached out and placed a hand on Danny's shoulder, the touch oddly comforting despite its strangeness. Do not fear, young one. They cannot trace me here, not yet. And I will leave soon. But I cannot depart without expressing my gratitude. For you, I have a gift. From somewhere within its robes, Krylax produced a small, metallic cube that fit neatly in the palm of its hand. The cube glowed faintly, casting a gentle light that danced over the alien's face. This is an ancient tool of my people, Krylax explained, holding it out to Danny. It contains knowledge wisdom from across the stars. If you accept this gift, you will understand things beyond your world's comprehension. But know this, knowledge is both a gift and a burden. Danny hesitated, his fingers hovering over the cube. What? What will it do to me? Krylax's eyes softened. It will give you insight, understanding, and a connection to my world. But it will change you, Danny Walker. And once you have this knowledge, you may never see your world in the same way again. Danny's hand trembled as he reached for the cube. A part of him was scared, but another part, the part that loved adventure and mystery, felt drawn to it. With a deep breath, he took the cube from Krylax's hand. The moment he touched it, he felt a surge of energy pulse through him, filling his mind with images and sounds he couldn't begin to describe. Stars, galaxies, alien creatures, strange landscapes, all of it flooded his thoughts, and he felt as though he was glimpsing the entire universe. Krylax watched him with a quiet sadness. Farewell, Danny. My time here is ending. But remember this, your kindness has saved me. And one day, I may return to repay the debt I owe. Before Danny could respond, Krylax pressed a slender hand to his forehead, and a wave of warmth and light washed over him. When he opened his eyes, he was alone in the clearing. The alien, the glow, everything was gone, as if it had been nothing more than a dream. But in his hand, he still held the cube, warm and pulsing with a gentle light. Danny stared at it, his mind buzzing with the weight of what he'd just experienced. Somehow, he knew that his life would never be the same. Danny woke the next morning with the metallic cube still clutched tightly in his hand, as if he'd been afraid to let go even in his sleep. The previous night felt surreal, like a dream that lingered just beyond memory's edge. But the cube was real, and its faint, pulsing glow reminded him that his encounter with Krylax hadn't been a figment of his imagination. Sitting up in bed, he stared at the cube, unsure what to do. As he held it, a familiar hum filled the air, and with a flicker of greenish light, Krylax's image appeared before him, hovering in a small hologram above the cube. The alien looked clearer, almost stronger, than he had the night before. Krylax's gaze was steady, and there was a calm urgency in his voice. Greetings, Danny, the hologram said, the words resonating directly in Danny's mind. If you are hearing this, it means the transfer of knowledge has begun. Danny blinked, looking around his room, half expecting his parents to walk in and see the alien talking to him. He wasn't ready for that conversation. His mom would probably ground him just for sneaking out the night before, and explaining his alien encounters seemed impossible. Transfer of knowledge? Danny whispered, clutching the cube a little tighter. What does that mean? As if hearing his question, Krylax continued. The cube is an ancient artifact, containing knowledge collected by my people over centuries. This knowledge will flow into your mind gradually, allowing you to understand concepts far beyond Earth's current comprehension. The alien's voice grew more solemn. But you must be careful, young one. The Intergalactic Council values secrecy above all. They will not tolerate the sharing of this knowledge with humans. If they discover that you possess it, they will come for you. Danny felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He glanced out his bedroom window, half expecting to see shadowy figures lurking outside, waiting to take him away. But the backyard was empty, bathed in the soft light of morning. Swallowing hard, he focused back on the hologram. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why give this to me?" Krylax's image softened, the alien's eyes reflecting something close to affection. "Because you showed kindness, Danny. You helped a stranger, even when you had no reason to trust me. My people have forgotten the value of compassion. They fear it as a weakness. But in you, I see strength that might one day help bridge the gap between our worlds." With that, Krylax's hologram faded, leaving Danny alone in his room with the cube, its gentle hum now a quiet companion to his thoughts. He sat there for a while, running his fingers over its smooth surface, feeling the faint thrum of energy within. Taking a deep breath, Danny decided to test his new abilities. He grabbed his math homework from his backpack. Numbers and formulas had always given him trouble, but now, as he looked at the page, something shifted in his mind. Equations that had once seemed impossible now seemed simple, almost laughably so. He scribbled down answers faster than he'd ever thought possible, barely needing to think about it. The knowledge was just there. He flipped through his science textbook, and just like with the math, concepts that once seemed dense and confusing now felt clear, even obvious. He found himself understanding principles of physics and chemistry that he knew were well beyond his grade level. Excitement surged within him, but it was tempered by a nagging sense of unease. This was incredible, yes, but it felt dangerous. As he pondered his next steps, a faint knocking echoed from downstairs. Danny froze. Something about the knock sounded strange, a little too precise, as if whoever was at the door had practiced the sound. He quickly hid the cube in his backpack and ran to the top of the stairs, straining to hear. His mom answered the door, and Danny leaned over the railing to catch a glimpse of the visitor. A tall man in a dark suit stood in the doorway, his face shadowed by a hat. His movements were stiff, almost mechanical, and when he spoke, his voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. "Good morning, Mrs. Walker." "I'm with the State Research Institute," the man said, holding up a silver badge with a symbol Danny didn't recognize. "We're conducting a survey on unusual atmospheric events. We've had reports of strange lights in this area and we're wondering if your family had noticed anything." Danny's heart skipped a beat. Strange lights? Was this a coincidence, or were they looking for Krylax? Or worse for him? "Oh, no, we haven't seen anything," his mom replied, her tone polite but wary. "Is there a reason you're asking?" The man's expression didn't change. "Just routine," he said, his gaze sliding past her to the staircase, where Danny crouched, watching. The man's eyes met Danny's for a brief, tense moment, and in that instant, Danny felt something strange, a prickling sensation, as if the man was trying to read his mind. Danny pulled back, his heart pounding. He waited, barely breathing, as the man finished his questions and left. The moment the door closed, Danny ran back to his room, hands shaking as he pulled the cube from his backpack. "They know, Danny," came Krylax's voice, filling his mind as soon as he touched the cube. "The Intergalactic Council knows I have shared forbidden knowledge with a human. They are coming to Earth. They won't take kindly to this breach." What do I do?" Danny stammered, gripping the cube as if it could somehow shield him from the agents. "Can't you help me?" There was a pause before Krylax responded, a sadness in his voice. "My physical form is gone from Earth, Danny. I cannot help you directly. But the knowledge I've given you will protect you if you use it wisely." The words sent a strange sense of calm through him. He had something the agents didn't have, knowledge beyond anything they could understand. If he could use it, he might have a chance to stay safe, to stay ahead of them. But he needed to think fast. He glanced out his window, scanning the street. The dark-suited man was gone, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It wasn't just one agent, they were everywhere, hidden, watching his every move. He had to get out of the house, somewhere they couldn't find him. Danny's mind raced. The only place that felt safe was the treehouse in his backyard. It was hidden from the street and gave him a clear view of the surrounding area. He grabbed the cube, slipped it into his backpack, and tiptoed down the stairs and out the back door, careful not to alert his mom. She wouldn't understand. She'd try to protect him, but there was nothing she could do. He climbed up into the treehouse, pulling the ladder up behind him, and crouched in the small space, his back against the wall. The cube hummed softly in his hand, as if responding to his fear. Danny focused on it, trying to reach out to Krylax again. "Krylax," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "If they're coming, what should I do? Where can I go?" The cube glowed brighter, and Krylax's voice filled his mind. "There is one way to protect yourself, a portal device. It's hidden deep in the forest, near the place where you found me. If you activate it, you can escape to Xanor, where the Council's reach does not extend." Danny's breath caught. Escape to another planet? The idea was thrilling and terrifying all at once. But if it was his only option, he had to try. Gathering his courage, he stuffed the cube back into his backpack, climbed down from the treehouse, and sprinted toward the woods. The forest was dense, but he moved quickly, following the path he'd taken the night before. The strange light had faded, but he still felt drawn to the clearing, as if something were guiding him. At last, he reached the spot where he'd met Krylax. He knelt down, searching through the grass and leaves until his fingers brushed something cold and metallic. He cleared away the dirt, revealing a circular device etched with the same strange symbols he'd seen on the cube. Holding his breath, he pressed his hand to the device. It began to hum, and a faint light traced along the symbols, forming a circle that shimmered in the air. A moment later, a gateway appeared before him, showing a landscape unlike anything he'd ever seen. Towering mountains glowed with bioluminescent trees, and a river of light flowed through a city in the distance. For a moment, Danny hesitated. Beyond the portal was an unknown world, a place he didn't fully understand. But on this side, agents were hunting him, and his life would never be the same. With a final, deep breath, Danny stepped through the portal, hoping that the strange new world held the answers and the safety he desperately needed. Danny stepped out onto the strange, glowing landscape of Xanor, feeling a rush of energy surge through him. The air was crisp and cool, filled with a faint hum, as though the world itself was alive. He looked around, taking in his surroundings, a place so vibrant and alien, it felt like stepping into a dream. Above him, a vast sky swirled with purples and deep blues, dotted with stars that seemed to pulse with their own light. Towering mountains rose in the distance, covered in bioluminescent vegetation that cast an ethereal glow over the landscape. A shimmering river of liquid light snaked its way through a nearby city built on tall, spiraling columns. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved along the streets, each one more unique than the last. Danny felt a mix of awe and fear. He was on an alien planet, something most people only dreamed of. But he also knew he couldn't stay still. The Intergalactic Council agents could find a way to track him here. He needed to find Krylax. The portal closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving him in silence. He held the cube tightly, hoping it would guide him. As if in response, the cube glowed, and a faint, shimmering arrow appeared above it, pointing toward the city in the distance. Taking a deep breath, Danny set off, moving cautiously along a narrow path that wound through fields of strange, floating plants. They emitted a soft glow, and their petals shimmered with colors that changed as he passed. Despite the beauty, he felt exposed, vulnerable in a world he didn't understand. As he approached the outskirts of the city, he noticed that its inhabitants were as varied as the stars. Tall, slender beings with elongated limbs and iridescent skin floated above the ground, while others moved on multiple legs or even slithered like snakes. Danny tried not to stare, but the creatures watched him with curiosity, some whispering in languages he couldn't understand. He pulled the hood of his sweatshirt up, hoping to blend in, but it was hard to stay unnoticed in a place where he was the only human. Ignoring the stares, he followed the arrow from the cube, winding his way through narrow, bustling streets filled with stalls selling items he couldn't begin to identify. Glowing crystals, vials of swirling liquids, and small, intricate devices that buzzed with energy lined the shelves. The arrow eventually led him to a quiet plaza filled with strange, hovering plants, each one radiating a soft, pulsing light. Standing at the center was Krylax, looking stronger and more composed than he had back on Earth. He wore a deep green robe that shimmered in the light, his forearms folded as he watched Danny approach. "Welcome to Xanor, Danny," Krylax said, his voice echoing gently in Danny's mind. There was warmth in his gaze, mixed with a hint of sadness. "I knew you would find your way here." Danny let out a shaky breath. "Krylax, they are agents from the council. They came to my house, they were looking for me. I didn't know where else to go." Krylax nodded gravely. "The council fears change, Danny. They see Earth as a world too primitive to understand our ways, and they protect that boundary with ruthless determination. By giving you knowledge, I broke one of their most sacred laws. They will not stop until they either retrieve the cube or erase your memory of everything." Danny's stomach twisted at the thought. "Can they find me here?" "For now, you are safe," Krylax assured him. "Xanor is outside their jurisdiction. This world is part of an alliance that believes in the free sharing of knowledge. Here, you are protected. But I must ask, are you willing to take on a responsibility that may change your life forever?" Danny hesitated, glancing around the plaza at the strange yet beautiful world around him. He thought of his quiet life back home, his family, his friends, and the comfortable routine of his everyday world. Part of him longed to return to that simplicity. But deep down, he knew he'd already crossed the line. The moment he accepted Krylax's gift, he'd become part of something bigger, something he couldn't just walk away from. I think so," he said, his voice steady. "What do you need me to do?" Krylax smiled, a gentle, approving expression. "Our alliance, the Intergalactic Knowledge Collective, needs someone like you, Danny. Someone from Earth who can bridge the gap between our worlds. You understand both our laws and your people's limitations, their thirst for knowledge. If you agree, you will become our liaison, a guardian of this knowledge. You would return to Earth with the cube, but with the understanding that it must remain hidden until humanity is ready." Danny felt a thrill of excitement. It was a monumental responsibility, but it felt right. "I'll do it. I want to help." Krylax placed a hand on Danny's shoulder, his eyes gleaming with pride. "Then there are things you must know, skills you will need to master if you are to stay safe and protect what you carry." He led Danny to a small building at the edge of the plaza. Inside, the air was thick with energy, humming in a way that made Danny's skin tingle. The walls were covered in symbols and diagrams, some of which he recognized from the cube's transfer of knowledge. Over the next few hours, Krylax taught him techniques for controlling the flow of knowledge in his mind. The cube had given Danny an understanding of alien science, technology, and languages, but Krylax showed him how to focus and channel it, to use his newfound abilities without becoming overwhelmed. They practiced mental exercises that sharpened Danny's awareness, allowing him to sense the presence of others, even from a distance. Krylax also showed him how to manipulate small objects using his mind, a skill that would be useful if he needed to defend himself. By the time they were done, Danny felt a strange confidence, as if he was seeing the world with new eyes. Krylax's training had unlocked parts of his mind he hadn't known existed. As they finished, Krylax placed a slender device in Danny's hand. It looked like a bracelet, but when he slipped it onto his wrist, it shifted and adjusted to fit perfectly. "This is a cloaking device," Krylax explained. "If ever you feel threatened, it will make you invisible for a short time. Use it wisely, it will only last for a few moments, and it requires time to recharge." Danny's hand lingered on the bracelet, feeling its warmth. "Thank you, Krylax." For everything. Krylax's eyes softened. Remember, Danny, this is a path filled with challenges. You may find yourself alone, unable to share your burden with those you care about. But know that I, and others in the Alliance, are with you in spirit. And one day, when the time is right, you will be the one to decide how much of this knowledge your people are ready to know. Danny felt the weight of those words, but he nodded, a determination settling in his chest. He was ready. Krylax led him back to the portal, where the shimmering gateway to Earth appeared once more. As Danny prepared to step through, Krylax placed a hand on his shoulder one last time. Farewell, Danny Walker. Remember your training. Remember the power of knowledge and the responsibility it carries. With a final, grateful nod, Danny stepped through the portal, feeling the familiar pull as he crossed back into his world. On the other side, Danny found himself in the same forest clearing where he'd first met Krylax. The night was quiet, and a light breeze rustled the leaves around him. He looked down at the cube in his hand, its glow now a comforting presence. His mind buzzed with all he'd learned, with the skills he'd gained. And though he was back on Earth, he knew he'd never truly be the same. He wasn't just a 12-year-old kid from a small town anymore. He was a guardian of secrets, a liaison to worlds beyond imagining, and a silent protector of knowledge. As he made his way back home, Danny felt a deep sense of purpose. He knew the agents might still be watching, waiting for the moment he'd slip up. But now he was ready. He had Krylax's training, the cube's knowledge, and a promise to keep. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, he was prepared to face them. Danny Walker was no longer just a regular kid. He was a bridge between worlds, entrusted with a secret that could change humanity forever, and he intended to protect it with everything he had. Returning home felt surreal. The world around Danny seemed both familiar and strange, as if he were seeing it with new eyes. He kept the cube close, tucked safely in his backpack, aware of its immense power and responsibility. Even the familiar sights of his backyard and his house looked different, imbued with a sense of purpose and weight he'd never felt before. As he walked through his neighborhood, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The council agents might not be able to follow him to Xanor, but Earth was still their territory. The thought of them monitoring his every move left him feeling exposed. Still, he kept his posture relaxed, his face neutral, just as Krylax had taught him. Blending in was his best defense. That night, Danny sat in his room, staring at the cube. Krylax had said that one day, he would be responsible for deciding how much of this knowledge humanity was ready for. But that day seemed far away. For now, he had to focus on staying safe and staying hidden. As he mulled over his new role, the cube began to glow softly, as if sensing his thoughts. A message flickered in his mind, Krylax's familiar voice speaking to him. Danny, it is time to establish contact with the collective. Danny straightened, heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The Intergalactic Knowledge Collective was the alliance Krylax had spoken of, an underground network of beings from across the universe who believed in the free sharing of knowledge. They operated in secret, hidden from the Council's strict oversight. Now, it seemed they wanted to make contact with him. The cube projected a series of coordinates into his mind. They led to a remote forested area outside his town, a place he knew well from weekend hikes with his family. Danny glanced at the clock. It was late, but he couldn't wait until morning. He had to go now. Grabbing a flashlight and the cube, Danny slipped out of the house, careful not to make a sound. The streets were quiet as he made his way through town, the only sounds being the occasional distant hum of a car and the chirping of crickets. The forest loomed ahead, a dark expanse that felt both eerie and inviting. As he entered the woods, Danny felt a strange pull guiding him deeper. The cube glowed faintly, lighting his path, as if it knew the way. He moved quickly but carefully, his senses heightened from the training Krylax had given him. Finally, he reached a small clearing surrounded by tall pines. In the center stood a large, circular platform covered in glowing symbols. The air felt charged, humming with an energy that sent a shiver down his spine. The platform looked ancient, but it pulsed with life, as if waiting for him. The cube in his hand emitted a low hum, and suddenly, the platform activated, casting a soft blue light over the clearing. The light shimmered and coalesced, forming a hologram of 3 alien figures, each one different in appearance. One had a tall, slender body with skin that looked like shifting sand, another had a head covered in thin, translucent tendrils, and the third was a small, spherical creature with eyes that blinked in unison. The slender figure stepped forward, inclining its head in greeting. "Greetings, Danny Walker. We are representatives of the Intergalactic Knowledge Collective. We have awaited your arrival." Danny's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stand tall, remembering Krylax's words. "Thank you," he replied, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm honored to be here." The tendril-headed alien tilted its head, studying him. "Krylax has spoken highly of you. Few humans would have shown the courage and compassion you did. By accepting his gift, you have become part of our cause." The spherical creature's eyes blinked again, and it spoke in a voice like chimes. "The Council believes knowledge should be contained, hoarded for those who deem themselves worthy. But we believe in freedom, in the right to learn and grow. You, Danny, are our bridge to Earth." Danny took a deep breath. What does that mean, exactly?" The slender figure raised a hand, and a holographic projection appeared, showing Earth alongside several other planets, each connected by lines of light. "Our mission is to share knowledge discreetly, to guide developing civilizations and help them avoid the mistakes others have made. But we must proceed carefully, for the Council watches closely. If they discover our activities, they will intervene, and they will erase every trace of our work." Danny nodded, absorbing the enormity of their mission. "So, what's my role in all of this?" The tendril-headed alien's voice softened. "You will be our observer. Your task is to learn, to keep the knowledge within the cube safe, and to assess when your world is ready for certain truths. You must be cautious, Danny. The Council is aware of you, and they will search relentlessly. But if you stay hidden, if you stay vigilant, you will be the first in a new alliance between Earth and the galaxy beyond." Danny swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. This was more than he'd ever imagined when he'd stumbled upon Krylax in the woods. He was just one kid in a small town, but he was also the guardian of knowledge that could change everything. The spherical creature's eyes blinked in unison. "To assist you, we will provide tools and allies. But remember, discretion is your greatest weapon." Danny felt a surge of determination. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to keep this knowledge safe and to protect Earth." The 3 aliens exchanged a look, their expressions unreadable but filled with something like pride. The slender figure nodded. "Then your training is complete for now. If ever you are in need, the cube will guide you. The collective is with you, even when you cannot see us." The figures shimmered, their forms beginning to fade. Danny felt a pang of loss. He'd only just met them, but they felt like allies in a world that had suddenly become much bigger, much more dangerous. As the holograms disappeared, the light on the platform dimmed, leaving him alone in the clearing once more. The cube in his hand pulsed gently, a reminder of the knowledge it held and of the path that lay ahead. The days that followed were a blur of careful planning and caution. Danny returned to school, slipping back into the routines of homework, classes, and hanging out with friends, but his mind was always focused on his mission. He kept the cube hidden, only consulting it when he was certain no one was watching. He used the mental exercises Krylax had taught him to sharpen his senses, training himself to detect the subtle presence of Council agents. They appeared occasionally, shadowy figures lurking at the edges of his world, but Danny stayed one step ahead, using his new abilities to blend in and avoid detection. One evening, as he sat in his treehouse, watching the sunset, he felt a strange sense of calm. The responsibility was enormous, but he knew he was ready for it. He was part of something bigger, something that could one day change the world. And even though he couldn't tell anyone, he felt a sense of purpose that made everything else seem small in comparison. Years passed, and Danny grew up, carrying the secrets of the collective with him. He continued his studies, diving into fields of science, technology, and philosophy, each one adding to his understanding of the knowledge within the cube. And all the while, he kept his promise, watching Earth's progress and waiting for the day when humanity would be ready for the truths he held. As he matured, he became more than just an observer. He became a guide, quietly influencing small changes, planting seeds of curiosity and innovation that would prepare humanity for the future. The collective occasionally reached out, their holograms appearing in quiet moments to offer guidance and support. They became his mentors, his silent allies, shaping him into the guardian Earth needed. One evening, as he stood on a hill overlooking his town, now a young man, he felt the familiar presence of Krylax beside him. The alien's form shimmered, still as ageless as the day they'd first met. "You have done well, Danny," Krylax said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "You have honored your promise and ours. The Council has yet to suspect anything, thanks to your vigilance." Danny nodded, a sense of accomplishment settling over him. "Thank you, Krylax. I couldn't have done it without you." Krylax placed a hand on his shoulder, his gaze warm. "One day, Earth will be ready, and you will be the one to reveal the wonders of the galaxy to your people. Until then, remember, knowledge is a gift, but it is also a burden. Use it wisely, and the future will be brighter than you can imagine." With those final words, Krylax faded into the night, leaving Danny alone under a sky filled with stars. He looked up, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on him, but also a sense of freedom and purpose that lifted him up. Danny Walker, once an ordinary kid from a small town, was now the bridge between worlds, the keeper of secrets, and the guardian of humanity's future. And as he gazed at the stars, he knew that the adventure was only just beginning.